Good afternoon. Doc, you drinking water already? Tequila. Okay, tequila. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our AAPC's annual meeting and the opening keynote address for tonight. The next 2 days are going to be fast-paced and fun-filled and thought-provoking. Most importantly, you'll be drinking at the expense of Doc Schweitzer. Doc has agreed to handle all the tequila you can drink while you're here in Austin, and I hope that you'll take advantage of his offer. Grab you a shot glass outside there, like this one, Doc, right here. And he'll be standing nearby to help you fill it up. Our first order of business is to provide you and as members of the AAPC an update on the activities of the association for the past year. The AAPC has a very small staff, and we have the support of a fabulous company, AMG, our association management company, which is headquartered in McLean, Virginia. We're committed to promoting excellence in the work that we do and in the political consulting industry. I'd like to take a moment, if I could, a special moment of leeway here to deviate from our agenda to pay special recognition to a young lady who's worked for us for the past year and a half. Alicia, would you come join me on the stage? I had not planned on this happening. Alicia notified us that she's going to be leaving to take an opportunity she couldn't pass up. And the one thing I'm very proud of at the AAPC is that we have trained some really extraordinary young people who've helped us in our staff. And Alicia, you're certainly one of those. Now, you've stood by and collected business cards for me since you've been at the AAPC, so I could give away lots of these. Today, I'm going to give you one.
Well, hot
of
now.
your own. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I hope that you will take time to thank Alicia personally while we're here at the conference, because she's certainly going to be missed, and it's been a real blessing to have her on staff to help with the transition with Elena coming in as our executive director. I want to sincerely thank all of you who've made my job as president easy. I couldn't have done what we have done, and the staff couldn't have done what they have done without the support of those of you on the board and in our membership. We've had a very devoted and dedicated bipartisan group of people working for the betterment of the entire association and our profession. And it is thriving because of your involvement. So it's my great privilege to welcome to the stage now the co-chairs of our nominating committee, Carol Damon, a member of our board, and Art Hackney, our vice president.
Thanks, Dale. This is great. For the Democratic Caucus, we are honored to present 3 new board members that were voted by the board unanimously and will join the board, if membership approves, on July 1 for a 2-year term. Really happy. We're going to have 2 out of the 3 new board members are women. Really happy about that. Woo! Liz Chatterton. Raise your hand, Liz. Woo! Direct mail consultant in Washington, D.C. And Rose Kapelchinsky, who's out of Los Angeles. There's Rose. Rerunning Maria Cantwell this year up in the state of Washington. And not here, Jim Margolis from GMMB, founding member of Greer Margolis. And I would just like to identify our other Democratic Caucus members that are here tonight. Liz, we already said Liz. Hi, Liz.
You're being reelected.
Oh, reelected. Thank you. Lorena Chambers from Chambers Lopez Strategies. Where is she? I know she's there. There you are. Hi. Myself, I need no introduction. Ondine Fortune. Is Ondine here? Gail Garbrandt. Rose and Jim, who will join in July. Mark Melman. Is Mark here? There he is. Jeff Pollock. Woo! Rich Schlackman, who I saw earlier, he's here. There's Rich. Jim Spencer, standing in the back, and Liz Welch. Woo! And now for the Republican caucus members and new members, Art Hackney.
For the Republican caucus, we have one new member who we'll induct with the unanimous consent of the nominating committee and with your approval, who's going to join the APC board, also a woman. She's replacing Frank Schubert, and she therefore is also from California. She won't be here until Friday, but Joanne Davis is our board member-elect on the Republican caucus of the Davis Group in California. She does fundraising. And I'd like to recognize the Republican members whose terms were renewed by unanimous consent of the Board of Directors, again, subject to your approval. John Brabender Cox. He's out on the campaign trail at the moment for Mr. Santorum. Joanne Davis of the Davis Group, who I mentioned. Rebecca Donatelli of Campaign Solutions. Ed Goaz of the Terrence Group, who's speaking to a university during this conference. Dan Hazelwood, Targeted Creative Communications. One of our Republican caucus members and our legal counsel for the board, Thomas Hiltack, Bell McAndrews and Hiltack. Jim Innocenzi of Sandler Innocenzi. I don't know if Jim is here. Wayne LaPierre of the National Rifle Association, who I know is not here tonight. Mike Mahalke of Meridian Strategies. Beth Miller of Miller Public Affairs Group. Richard Norman of the Richard Norman Company, here in the front row. And Tom Shepard of Tom Shepard and Associates. And as Vice President, I look forward to working with this entire team to continue on some pretty exciting things that you'll hear about later that we have discussed in the Board of Directors meeting.
Congratulations to all of our nominees and those who are standing for re-election. Do I hear any objections to election and re-election of these members who have been nominated? Hearing no objections, then they are duly elected. Thank you all very much. I want to congratulate those who are newly elected. We had an exciting board meeting this afternoon. I think the discussions that have taken place today will make the association a better one as we move forward. You know, this association has grown dramatically since I joined it 22 years ago, my first Pollie conference. There have been a lot of great people who've come before me who've been instrumental in the development of the association to its current level. And I want to say, especially today, how grateful I am to serve with the group of officers that I serve with as president. Art Hackney, who you just saw, Brad Chisholm, our treasurer. Brad, stand up. And our past president, Whit Ayers. Whit, would you please stand up? I would like to repeat what I said earlier today to those of you here to our board. Every Monday, since I became president in July, we've had an officer's call. You know, the four of us are all like you. We're busy in our careers and with the things that we got to take care of. But we've taken time every Monday to refocus on what the AAPC is doing. And Whit and Art and Brad, thank you all for being the compass that's helped keep us on course for what you've done. And I want to especially thank Whit for the platform that he built for us to stand on today. That during the 2 years that he was president, our country went through an unprecedented recession, and our association was no different than every other business in this country. We hit the rocks too. And thanks to Whit's strong leadership, and we weathered that storm, and we're in good stead today because of that. And I'd like to ask you to join me in showing Whit our appreciation. One of the tasks that I've been assigned, of course, is to make academic ex official appointments to the board. My two appointments are Mike Burton of Ohio University and Caucus, who has been on our board for the last year from Fordham University, has been reappointed, of course. And Caucus asked me to express his apology for not being able to be here today. He's with the State Department doing a project in Europe and couldn't get back to the States in time for our conference. It's truly a privilege for me to serve alongside all of those who are leaders in our association. They're a group of individuals that can attest that AAPC service really makes a difference, and the effort they put forth continues to make our association better. We have also the AAPC Foundation, which is an entity created, a sister organization to the AAPC. Our chair is here today, Wayne Johnson, a former AAPC president. Please stand up, Wayne. We've had lots of folks who've been volunteer judges for this Pollie conference. A record number of entries were made, and a record amount of work was done as a result of that. Is Tom Edmonds in the room? I can't see because the lights are shining in my eyes. So Tom's the former president. I know he's here. I saw him earlier today, but I was wanting to recognize him. If you see Tom, acknowledge him when you run into him. And Raymond Struthers kind of hanging around the hotel. He's not able to be here for our conference because he's helping run the Texas relays. You would never know by looking at Raymond today that he used to be a track star. But he was that. We have some of our chapter presidents here, and I'd like to recognize them. Before I do that, I want to acknowledge that our Midwest chapter president, Jamie Sexton from Chicago, could not be here. Jamie's father is in the final days of his life with a battle from throat cancer, and he's with his dad as he should be. And I would ask that you keep Jamie and his family in your prayers and thoughts. Our Mid-Atlantic chapter president, Whitney Hurt. Whitney, stick your hand up. Bart Robert from New York, our Greater New York. Hi, Bart. Brian Franklin, our Southern chapter president. Brian. And I don't know if John Rowley's gotten here yet or not. John's going to be Brian's successor for our Southern chapter president. This is Brian's last official act as his president. And Dana Reed from our Western California chapter. Dana? As James Aldretti got back from we're organizing a new Southwest chapter, and James, who's helped with this conference so much, has agreed to be our organizational president for that endeavor. And I'm sure you'll see James around tomorrow. With the collective support and participation of these individuals, the AAPC will continue to grow. Part of my focus as your president has been to build upon my predecessor's great work, and we are now in an unprecedented position of strength to put forth member services and to grow the organization. I'm honored now to bring perhaps my number one best friend in the association, the guy that I looked to for help when I decided I was going to do this job, and that's Brad Chisholm from Mississippi, our treasurer. Brad, would you come forward and present the finances? It pays to bring your staff with you.
Thank you, Dale. It's my job to bring you the financial report, and I would encourage you to look at this handout. There are lots of numbers on that page, but I want to draw your attention to one very important number, perhaps the most telling number, $249,000 in the last fiscal year in terms of an increase in net assets. At the end of the day, that number is perhaps the most telling. It's indicative of the hard work that went on before Dale's work as president and through Whit's leadership, and also what we've continued through the hard work and good stewardship of the Trade Association Management Company. You may be aware that we made a decision to bring on a Trade Association Management Company. This momentum that you see from this number has continued largely out of, several things, not only their expertise in staging a conference, but in the wonderful sponsorship this year of so many of you in the room. If you are a sponsor, raise your hand. The rest of us, please, let's thank them. So we've got great sponsors. I want to remind you that the board members who are here with me take their pledges participation seriously. Each and every board member paid his or her way here, paid his or her hotel, full registration, and also makes a commitment to raise or contribute $5,000 a year to the trade association in addition to the work. So it's a lot of work. They take their tasks very seriously. So sponsorship, the trade association, board support, and certainly the leadership of Doc Schweitzer and Lorena Chambers. Doc has done an amazing job putting this conference together with the speakers, the sponsorship, highlighting all the wonderful assets of Austin, and it would not be possible. You won't see any ice sculptures or champagne fountains, but I promise you that we're going to have a wonderful financial success here, a great Austin time. The numbers speak for themselves. We'll be happy to report those in detail. One of the things you should know is it's all very transparent. If you'd like the 300 pages in reports of what happened last year, contact me. They're there for you. The recap on what we are going to raise this year through this conference, it's all there. It's your money as your trade association, and we want you to know exactly what's being done with it. We look forward now, having spent the last few years digging ourselves out of this hole with the recession under first Whit and now Dale's leadership, to having enough resources in the bank to carry us through those difficult times. But even more importantly, in my mind, having resources to devote to more member services so that you out there get more for your money with the trade association. So thanks again to Doc and Lorena. Thanks for the board members and their participation. Thank you again very much for the sponsors. And please see me afterwards with details about any specific financial questions. We'll be glad to go over each of those in great detail. But again, I leave you with the single phrase, the single statement that the state of this trade association is very strong financially. Thanks to everyone in this room. And I was remiss in not introducing the segue to Elena Joyce, who is our executive director. Elena comes to this job with absolutely no previous experience with political consulting. She hasn't been sold by relationships with those of us over the last few decades. She's done an amazing job, she and her colleagues at the Trade Association Management Group, and she's going to walk us through the next portion of our agenda. Elena?
Thank you, Brad. As you point out, I am an association person, not a political one. Though, believe me, there's a lot of politics in association management. However, I want to thank each and every one of you for your very warm welcome to the AAPC. This is my first Polly's, and I am thrilled to be here to welcome you to Austin. I want to tell you a little bit about the work we've been doing over the last 9 months. As one of my favorite management gurus, Peter Drucker, likes to say, the true competitive advantage of associations is the ability to create community. And our focus over these past 9 months and the ones ahead are to continue to expand and strengthen this community of political professionals. Together with our regional chapters, we've presented conferences in Orlando, Chicago, New York City, and up ahead, we've got a program with Sacramento, June 27 and 28. And coming this fall, our academic outreach conference planned in conjunction with Harvard University. We have, on the back end, we've invested considerable time and energy evaluating the platforms and processes we have to service UF members, and we're very excited to be bringing online a new membership database system and platform, so look for streamlined access to your interaction with AAPC, whether you want to register an event, renew your membership, update your roster, or enter the Pollie contest. This new program will enable us to move to next generation softwares to serve you better. And finally, of course, we spent a lot of time and energy with the expert guidance of our program and contest planning committees presenting this forum. As Brad outlines, this year's Pollie has set new benchmarks for the AAPC. This year's contest drew a record number of entries, nearly 1,400. In addition, with over 400 attendees and nearly 50 sponsors, many of them new to our lineup, APC continues to diversify and build its network. We have newly formed committees focusing on the areas of technology and communications. I encourage you to, if you are interested in technology in particular, there'll be a meeting of that group Friday morning, 8 a.m. Join them for breakfast, learn about the initiatives, learn how to get involved, and leverage that opportunity to interact with others, leaders in the digital space. I encourage you, one of our board members say, make the investment. You get back double what you give. So I encourage you, give back to the industry that has supported you, or build the network that will launch and sustain you. There are numerous ways to get involved. If you are a member, please do, and if you are not, please join. That said, I wish you a wonderful conference. We are so glad you're here. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage the president of the AAPC, Dale Emmons.
First, I'd like to begin by thanking our sponsor for this evening's event, Call Fire. When you see them during the conference, if you will, make a special effort to acknowledge their contribution to making this evening possible. It's my extreme pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker this evening, Joe Greene. Joe is a pioneer in the internet and social media for politics and in philanthropy. Our next speaker is a co-founder and president of Nation Builder, which has quickly become a revolutionary political software. It is said to allow campaigns to do more than Obama did in 2008 from this platform for $25 a month. He is also the co-founder of Caucus, which has 150 million users worldwide and has transformed social giving. He was an early advisor to Facebook. In fact, he was Mark Zuckerberg's roommate at Harvard. His approach to building online organizing tools is rooted in his offline experience as a grassroots political organizer for state, federal, and local campaigns. Born and raised in Santa Monica, California, he first became engaged in the political process as a member of the local Board of Education as a high school student. Being from Kentucky, I can tell you this: if you can do school board politics, you can do anything. So if you will, join me in welcoming Joe Greene.
Thanks for having me. I was really trying to calculate the right amount of attire to wear for this, and in Silicon Valley, we tend to just wear shorts and sandals all the time. And I thought I would be a little overdressed, but it looks like I had all ties before me. So I'm really excited to be here to talk to you. My background is in politics. I got my start as a grassroots organizer, as a field organizer, and I've gotten sort of pulled into the world of technology and charity, and I'm really excited to get back to politics. And what I want to talk to you about tonight is what I think is one of the biggest transformations in the history of American politics that we're just right on the edge of seeing happen. And I think that while the technology is going to be underlying all of this, I think all of you who are actually on the ground running the campaigns are the ones who are going to really be making this happen. And I think you're at the center of it. And so what I want to talk about is why the internet is about to finally revolutionize politics. You know, we've heard, I think, for 20 or 30 years that the internet is about to revolutionize politics. It's sort of like nuclear fusion. It's always been a few years away. But I think that there are some factors that are converging together this year that are really going to make that kind of dream really come true. So I want to get my little clicker here. So I'm curious, I think all of us who read the press in 2008, if you only judged the election based on what the press said, you might have thought that the single deciding factor for Obama's victory was the internet. So I'm curious, I'm going to go out on a limb here, for all of your personal experiences, I'm curious if you could raise your hand if the internet has been the single biggest deciding factor in your campaigns. I don't think I see any hands. One hand? Hello? One hand. Absolutely. So, you know, I have found that to be the case as well. So the internet has revolutionized industry after industry, but it has not yet revolutionized this one. So I want to provide a little bit of historical context to why I think this is what's about to happen, but has not yet happened, is so monumental. So I think that if we look at the history of American democracy, the thing that drives it is the media and communications that are available at the time. And I like to think of the history of American democracy in two basic phases. The first phase was few to few, and the second phase was few to many. And I think we're about to enter a third phase, which is many to many. So the first presidential election in American history was in 1788 and 1789, the only election to ever occur in an odd-numbered year. There were 3.9 million people in the United States. Does anybody know how many votes were cast in the first presidential election? Any guesses? There were 38,818. So less than 1% of the people in the United States voted in the first presidential election. Now, there was a whole bunch of reasons for that. You had to be male, you had to be white, you had to own a shit ton of land. Most people did not qualify. But what that meant is that all politics was, as Tip O'Neill later said, indeed local. Because you, as a candidate, could literally talk to everybody. Town hall meetings, pamphlets, posters were basically enough to get the job done. And then as the country grew physically, states like Kentucky joined the Union, and we had more people enfranchised, the media and communication was not able to keep up. And we had what you could call the biggest failure of government, which was the Civil War. And then if you fast forward, you enter the second era of broadcast media, where you had few to many communication. And you finally, again, had a way for candidates to directly talk to people. First with radio, like FDR's fireside chats, famous Nixon-Kennedy television debates. And now I think we're on the edge of entering a third era that's powered by the internet. Today, the average American spends a little bit more than an hour a day on the internet. And I don't know if you knew this, but the demographic group that actually spends the most time are 45 to 54-year-olds. They spend about 1.3 hours a day on the internet. I find this entertaining as I feel like they probably should be working. But people, and though that same group spends about 2.7 hours a day watching television. So people spend about twice as much time watching TV as they spend on the internet. Yet, if you look at political spending, the estimates are that this year, 2012, we'll have about $9.8 billion in political spending. About 58% of that will be television. About 2% of that will be on the internet. So we have about half as much time spent online as on TV, and 1/50th the money spent online as on the internet as on TV. So why is that? Why is so much more money? Why are all of you spending so much more money on TV than on the internet? Are you dim? No. It's that the internet has not been ready. And I think that what we've seen over time is that the fundamentals of campaigns have not changed. It is the technology that changes. And I want to get my next slide here. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Okay, I couldn't see it. All right. So I want to thank my friend Marty Stone. I don't know if he's here. Who pointed me on to the really cool document. And this is an excerpt from, which is Abraham Lincoln in 1840 put out a circular to the Whigs. This is before he was a Republican. He was a Whig. To the Republicans of the state, the Whigs of Illinois in 1840. And these were a couple of his, the things that he said that they should do. So the first was to divide their county into small districts and to appoint in each a subcommittee whose duty it shall be to make a perfect list of all the voters in their respective districts and to ascertain with certainty for whom they will vote. Sounds a lot like voter ID. Secondly, it will be the duty of said subcommittee to keep a constant watch on the doubtful voters, I like these in caps, and from time to time have them talked to, I hope he doesn't mean that in sort of a Chicago talk to kind of way, by those in whom they have the most confidence. So have people's friends and trusted community leaders talk to them about who they should vote for. Thing 3, it will also be their duty to report to you at least once a month the progress they are making, and on election days see that every Whig is brought to the polls. Voter turnout, volunteer mobilization. And finally, this is particularly fascinating, encloses a prospectus for a newspaper to be published until after the presidential election. Communication channel, how do you actually talk to people? These 4 things, figuring out who your voters are, organizing your volunteers to talk to them, getting it reported back, bringing them to polls, and communicating, those have been the fundamentals of politics. Those are the fundamentals of politics today, and those are the fundamentals of politics in 1840. And I'm going to argue that those fundamentals are not changing, but the internet is finally ready for those fundamentals to be brought into the world, online. And so I'm going to talk about 3 trends that I think are converging right now that are going to enable this transformation. The first is what I call the internet gets real. The second is open platforms. And the third is software eats the world. So let me talk about what I mean by each of these. So real identity has been the holy grail of the internet since the World Wide Web started in 1992. We might forget it today, but for the 90s and pretty much all of this past decade, the 2000s, the internet was an anonymous place. People did not know who everyone was. The internet was a place of anonymity where people talked, their identity was a pseudonym. For example, you might go into a Star Wars Usenet group, and Whit Ayres wouldn't be Whit Ayres. He would be Boba Fett 12. It's okay, because I was Boba Fett 10. And this meant that the real-world social strictures did not apply. So you had this problem of trolls online, of people saying inappropriate things, doing inappropriate things. All the things that we have built over thousands of years as a society were incapable of governing the internet because you didn't know who anybody was. Because of this big problem and big challenge for the internet, the biggest internet companies of the day put literally hundreds of millions of dollars into trying to solve this problem. So, for example, Microsoft created a program called Passport. AOL had a program called Magic Carpet. All of these were attempts to create a third-party verified identity. You could go onto Microsoft, put in your social security number, put in your credit card, and they would issue you an ID. Much like the government issues you a driver's license. Note, these all failed. They never got adoption, even with hundreds of millions of dollars spent in advertising and promotion. What did catch on, and nobody expected, was Facebook as the identity system. Now, Facebook is not third-party verified. Facebook does not say, this is Joe Greene. But if you think about it, in the real world, that's not how you learn who someone is right now. So I'm up here, right? You have not seen my driver's license. I could be anyone. I could be an imposter. I might be Dick Cheney. But you know who I am because there's all of these social cues telling you. Alana Joyce got up here, and your president got up here, and you saw me in the program. I would have to be very, very clever, maybe Dick Cheney, to be able to fool you into believing that I'm not, in fact, who I am. And that is actually how the real world works, right? If I wanted to go down and get a fake ID, I can go down to Olvera Street in LA, 2 blocks from my office, and for $70, I can get a driver's license that says I'm whoever I want. Not that I've done that. And however, if I tried to convince your wife that I was you, it just wouldn't work, even if I showed her this great fake ID. And so now that we have this identity layer, it isn't just enough that we have Facebook, because we've had Facebook since 2004. In fact, in 2004, I asked Mark Zuckerberg to put a box on the front page of Facebook that said, register to vote. And the link on that box actually went into my personal Gmail address. Now, if Facebook was the size it was today, I would have been completely overwhelmed. But I got about 3 emails a day, because Facebook had a couple 100,000 people. So it's only been recently where Facebook has gotten the level of ubiquity about 175 million people in the US alone and 1 billion worldwide are using Facebook at least once a week. So we have now reached a level of ubiquity of this identity. And so now that we have ubiquitous internet identity, or the internet is real, we're even changing the way that we talk about the internet. We used to say, I'm going online, like I'm going into weird, bizarro world with all the freaks. And now we talk about using the internet, because the internet is an intertwined part of our lives. And I believe that is at its core because we've solved the identity problem. Now, politics, of course, is fundamentally about identity, because you can only vote if you're a real human citizen. You know, Boba Fett 12 can't vote, or at least maybe in Illinois. But so now that we've solved that problem, and we've seen that we've got this huge identity layer, we then get to our second trend. Can I get the? Which is open platforms. So it's not enough to have everybody in this identity system. You actually have to be able to access the identity system. So it's only been very recent that a set of platforms have emerged and matured so that other companies can use that data. Facebook's got a platform, Twitter's got a platform, the iPhone has a platform. So not only do you know who people are, but you can follow that identity across all the places they spend time on the internet. So you can know that the same Joe Greene is this person reading their email, is this person visiting Facebook, is this person on their iPhone, is this person logged in using Google Plus on YouTube. You can now follow them all of the places that they spend time, which is really great, but it creates a challenge. And that challenge is, how do you string all of these things together? How do you use email and text messaging and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all these different places? How do you make sure you're communicating with these real people that you now know about in all these different places? So this gets us to our third trend, which is, and I'm gonna steal a turn of phrase here from one of our investors at Nation Builder named Mark Andreessen. So Mark Andreessen is one of the pioneers of the internet. He was the founder and CEO of Netscape, which is really launched the internet revolution, founded a bunch of other companies like WebMD and Ning. And he has coined this phrase, software eats the world. And what that means is that we are finally at a moment, only now, and frankly, people thought this moment was going to happen like 15 years ago. If you guys remember, during the Web 1.0 bubble days, everybody was launching websites which are like web blank. We're going to be web van, we're going to be pets.com, and everything's going to get transformed by the internet. Most of those things, it turned out it didn't happen. But now we're finally ready. And I'm going to throw up a quote from Mark, which is that 6 decades into the computer revolution, 4 decades since the invention of the microprocessor, and 2 decades into the rise of the modern internet, all of the technology required to transform industries through software finally works and can be widely delivered at global scale. And he said this in the Wall Street Journal about 6 months ago. Now, what does that actually mean? So, go back one, sorry. Thanks. So, what does this really mean? Well, Ben Horowitz, who is Mark's partner at their VC firm, Andreessen Horowitz, and sits on our board at Nation Builder. Ben was the CEO of the first cloud computing company. You guys have heard about hosting your site in Amazon in the cloud. He was the CEO of a company called Loud Cloud, which is the first cloud computing company. And he said in 2000, it cost about $150,000 to cloud host a basic web application. 10 years later, it cost $1,500. So the price and the ability to build these systems, to build proper software, has come down so dramatically that we are now seeing industries that we thought 15 years ago would get revolutionized today. One of my favorite examples of this, and I think this is only starting to happen, is retail. 15 years ago, people were talking about how physical retail stores were screwed. They're going away. Well, that didn't really happen. A few of them went away, but most of them are still around. But we're now starting to see today where sites like Groupon, Fab.com, ShoeDazzle, a bunch of sites that are starting to make immense amounts of money because they are selling direct to consumer. They're not like Amazon reselling someone else's products. They're actually creating their own brands and their own products. And this has been able to happen because of these convergence of software eating the world. There's other examples from, the way health data works to, you can pull out your iPhone in San Francisco and go to Uber and order yourself a town car in 2 minutes on your iPhone, completely going around the entire taxi industry, which is one of the most regulated industries in existence. It just goes around the taxi license system. I think that we are on the verge of this also happening with political software, that software is going to eat politics. And that's not a scary thing. It means that you all finally get the wonderful experience of having properly working software, which many other industries have had for quite some time. If you are a salesperson, you've had Salesforce for now 15 years, which is a pretty, not perfect, but like a pretty good piece of software. I think you're going to start seeing this for politics. So if you look at, the state of political technology today, what has happened is that because traditional proper software companies have not served the industry, what has happened is that political consultants, maybe some of you in this room, have been put into the situation where you have to build technology. It isn't usually something that you want to do. And what happens is that because the consultant approach is taken, you can take a firm like Blue State Digital, for example, they're building little pieces of the software as people pay them by the hour to build it. This would be sort of like building a house one room at a time with a different architect for each room. The house, at the end, would probably look like crap. Software, the core of the software model, is the opposite of this. You don't build it piecemeal at a time. You build one piece of software, correct the first time, you make it extensible, and then it is very, very cheap to replicate the software. So it doesn't cost $50,000, $100,000 every time you want to put up a new site. It costs $25 to do. And so what I believe is that you guys are on the verge of saying we're trying to do it Nation Builder. There's other folks trying to do it as well. You guys are on the verge of being able to have software that is both cheap, easy to use, and does everything that you need it to do for your campaign, which has not been previously possible. And so, we've talked about these three trends: the ubiquity of real identity, the ability to access that identity through APIs, and software eating the world, the availability of cheap, reliable software that ties all of this together. So, what are the implications? Where did I put my? Here we are. So, going back to these kind of four fundamental points that our good friend Abraham Lincoln told us about, I want to talk in a little bit of detail about each of these four and kind of how I think they're different, and then talk about what I think is a pretty somewhat surprising conclusion to all of this. So first is the question of who you talk to. Well, now you have a site you have something like Facebook, which is probably the best people database that has ever existed in the world. Because not only does it cover 1 billion people, but every single person is extremely interested in keeping it up to date. The second that you get engaged to your girlfriend, you have to put it on Facebook, or else she is going to get pissed off. The second you move addresses, everything that, with a traditional voter file, you might wait. I mean, there are people that have been dead 10 years. We still get mail from my grandmother's been dead 5 years, and we still get voter mail for her, and I'm sure that's not at all an uncommon situation. Now, it doesn't mean that replaces the voter file, but it gives you the ability to augment that with data that people are updating on their own, and not only, and also a lot more types of data, what people are interested in, and who they know, and most importantly, I believe, who they know. So you can go to a volunteer, and instead of saying, hey, call these 100 people who live in your town that you've never met, who we've identified as registered undecided voters. Instead, here are 15 of your friends, they're undecided, go call them and see if you can get them to support us. And that gets into the second point I kind of skipped here, which is who talks to them. So you can now make sure that the right person is talking to them, whether that's a friend or someone that they trust, the candidate themselves. And you can, you now also have much better tools to organize the people that you talk to. So I got my start as a field organizer. That's how I was trained. And my experience was that the most important thing in getting your volunteers to come back day after day and make phone calls, go door to door, do the work of the campaign, has actually very little to do with how excited they are about the campaign. It has to do with their relationships with each other. So I worked for John Kerry in Arizona, in rural Arizona, in the summer, which is like a bad idea for a whole number of reasons. One is that I was literally in the town called Havasu, Lake Havasu, which is the hottest populated place in America. It's 120 degrees, doesn't drop below 100 for 4 months straight, 24 hours a day. And it's also not exactly John Kerry country. Wasn't then, and I'm sure it is not today. And so we got our volunteers up at 6 in the morning to go door to door because it was only 107 degrees instead of 120. And these were usually 65, 70-year-old volunteers. The thing that got them out of bed was not their extremely passionate love for John Kerry, to the degree that that was possible, or their extreme hate for George W. Bush. It was the fact that their friend was going to pick them up in about 10 minutes, and if they didn't get out of bed, they're going to look like a real jerk. And so when we would have big pieces of poster board on our wall that said, here's our top canvassers, here's our top phone bankers, and people cared a whole lot about being on that list. Well, now you can do that on the internet because everybody has a public profile. They've got a Facebook profile, they've got a Twitter profile. And so you can show that I'm the top 7 phone banker, and my friends can see that, and I can care about getting to be the third best phone banker or the first best phone banker. And finally, what channels you reach them through. It is now possible to know who someone is almost everywhere they are on the internet. And so when people are spending that 1.3 hours a day online, and the bulk of that time is spent in a very small number of places, by the way. It's spent in their email, on a search engine, on Facebook or other social networking sites, and on a small number of news sites that they read. That's about it. And so it is possible with the combination of using these various APIs we talked about and using cookies to target ads, to target communications, to reach people, know who they are in all these different places. So, we talked about at the beginning about the news that came out of the 2008 campaign. And so if you just relied on the press, you would conclude that what online politics and online organizing is going to accomplish is it's going to elect the President of the United States. While I think it has some impact on that, I think it entirely misses the point. I think what we're actually going to see is a complete revolution in everything down the ballot. In Congress, state houses, everything down the ballot. And there's a pretty simple reason for that, or 2 reasons, I'd say. First of all, it's very known conventional wisdom that it's very hard to do persuasion with field on a presidential. And the reason for that is that the presidential election is the single most covered press event in America. It gets more press than the Super Bowl. It gets more press than 9/11 got. And so people's minds are getting made up in the atmosphere, on Fox News, in the newspaper. It's not, if somebody comes and knocks on the door and says, I think you should vote for Obama, they're going to have an opinion. But everything down the ballot, not only do people not have an opinion on who they should vote for, they have no clue who's running. No clue. We have in America, and this number always shocks me, I'm sure you guys know it, there are 509,000 different elected offices. So that means 1 in 600 living, breathing Americans is elected to office. We have in Los Angeles, maybe one of my favorite elected positions, we have a body called the Vector Control Board, whose only job is mosquito abatement. And I should say they do a very good job. We don't have any mosquitoes in Los Angeles. They spray the crap out of everything. If you have a swimming pool filled with stagnant water for like 2 hours, they will come. But that is a separate, not only elected person, but elected body. All these positions actually have a lot of authority, a lot of power, but generally they do not have the resources to be able to run what you'd call a field campaign. These also happen to be the second reason that I think this is so big for local, is that the number of votes that you have to swing is usually pretty small. These are often off-cycle elections. It could be a matter of hundreds or a small number of thousands of votes. One of my favorite stories that I'll share about this kind of thing is there's a guy named Alex Torpy in New Jersey. He was one of our first customers at Nation Builder. And he is the youngest mayor. His official title is village president. But he's the youngest mayor in the state of New Jersey. He got elected village president of South Orange, New Jersey, at the age of 23. That was last year. I think he's 24 now. And he took on a 19-year incumbent. And what he did is he used Nation Builder, set up his website, pulled in freely available voter data, and then very precisely targeted not only who he would talk to, but how he would talk to them. So the older voters, he would go door to door and phone bank them. The younger voters, and actually a lot of the older voters too, he went on and literally friended one by one almost everybody in the town. And was up late at night on Facebook chat talking to them on Instant Messenger. And he won his election by 12 votes and beat a 19-year incumbent. You know, this is a small town, very insider politics. And we've seen that happen time after time after time. And so I believe that this combination of, you know, these three converging trends, that now you can know who you're talking to, and you can have the APIs to be able to talk to them, and you can have software that can do all of this, not for $100,000 or $50,000, but for $25, means that it's the price of a gym membership, and means that it's affordable to every race. And I think that this is really, really good for everybody in this room. And the reason I was chatting the other week with Michael Beach at Targeted Victory. I actually think I heard Targeted Victory mentioned. And he made the point after I started explaining what we were doing in Nation Builder, he said, wait, this means that we can take on more races and more localized races because we don't have to spend all this money and time setting up the website and the Facebook page and the Twitter and tying it all together and having 7 different systems. We can now do what we do best, which is helping with messaging, helping with organizing. And so, you know, I believe that for a lot of you where, you know, technology and software has an immense power to make you so much better at what you do. And I have been obsessed with this idea of building better organizing software since 2004 because I felt that pain, you know, trying to use Excel spreadsheets, and we even built our own little in-house system called Turn AZ Blue that a couple of my friends programmed. And so I guess what I'll leave you with is that I believe that when the story of the internet and politics is written, that it will not be the story that has been written. It's not going to be the story of who's elected president of the United States. It's going to be the story of the hundreds of thousands of congressmen and state assemblymen and councilwomen and members of the Board of Education and even members of the Mosquito Abatement Board that all of you helped to elect. And so, you know, I think this is an exciting moment where we sort of can return to many of the founding principles of America of, you know, going from this first presidential election that was local because there was nobody voting to hundreds of thousands of small elections going from few to few to many to many. So I'm excited to hopefully, you know, work with all of you on this journey, and I'm now have some time to answer questions. So thanks a lot. So I think we have mics going around. Happy to answer questions, hear thoughts, comments, death threats.
Joe, what's your thoughts on online voting? Is that going to be a reality based on your comments, the extension of online, that people will be able to cast their votes?
I think it's a very good question. I believe yes. I mean, we had, when I was an undergraduate at Harvard, all of our voting for student council was done through email. And it was a lot easier than setting up polls. I think what will probably come first is fully online registration. Is not having to like go online, print out a form and mail it in, but actually being able to register online. And we're already starting to see a few states, I think, have passed that, but we're just in process. And that'll be really interesting, right? Because you can now track that, and you could give social credit to volunteers and say, every 5 people you get to register, you know, you get to come to this event. And you could actually keep track of that, and they could, you know, message their friends on Facebook, send them a link to register, and you could track that they were actually responsible, just like you would track fundraising, you'd track that for registration. So I think that's the first step, is registration. And then I do think we've already seen a lot more states going to vote by mail. And, you know, vote by mail is great because your election day just went from 1 day to 30 or 60 or 90 or however many days. And so it's not quite as crazy. So I think we're seeing that transition, and I think, online voting will be an extension of both online registration and vote by mail. I don't know what the time frame will be, but I would guess, within the next, decade or two that we will see that.
Hi.
Hi.
So thanks for the keynote. I think it was interesting that you managed to do a great job presenting your product in this keynote. I would say, as a, coming from Blue State, that it's important to keep in mind that there's an opportunity to be fair-minded and reality-based when talking about competitors, and I would encourage everyone here in this room to hear a little bit more about reality pricing as opposed to the $100,000 that you've indicated is going on. So I congratulate you on the acquisition, but I would just encourage you to, in your presentation, perhaps be a bit fair-minded.
Okay. Well, I tried to mostly not spend my time talking about our product and talking about the changes I see in the world. Obviously, we're going to build things that are based on the changes that we see in the world, and I think that, I do think that Blue State has done some great work and has clearly did a great job serving the Obama campaign and serving some larger campaigns. But it is, there are differences in affordability and price, but happy to have that conversation. Yes, sir.
Stepping back from political campaigns for a moment, so we don't keep issuing death threats versus you. What's the next sort of change in individual behavior? You talked about retail not going away, but retail bookstores were one of the casualties. What do you think is the next changing thing in the internet world in the pop culture sense as opposed to the political sense?
I mean, one of the most interesting things that I see happening is this fundamental change in the nature of work. So we're seeing sites like Kickstarter. Are you guys familiar with Kickstarter? So Kickstarter is a place where people will say, I want to go on and I want to create this documentary, but I'm not able to get the money up front, so I'm going to ask people to donate me $250,000 so I can go and make the movie. And I will then go and everybody who gives me $20 is going to get a DVD. So what's interesting there, and we're seeing this happening with products, there was an iPod Watch, which raised $1 million on Kickstarter. There's another site called Etsy, which is a place where people sell handcrafted products. And I think we are going through this sort of deindustrialization of America. I mean, we've been going through it. And there is this fundamental question, which is like, what is everybody going to do all of the time? And how are people going to make a living? And I think what's interesting is we're able to see that, we've seen this most visibly in the kind of media areas like music and movies, where these traditional distribution channels have broken down. A great example of this are, book authors. If you are, my grandmother was a biographer in the 80s and wrote and published some historical women's biographies. And when they did well, but they were very niche. And at the time, Simon & Schuster did a lot of work to push out the product. They paid for book tours, they paid for advertisements. Today, unless you're Stephen King level, your publisher is just going to print your book. So these models are changing where, the bad part is if you already got through the gate, then it really sucks. Like if you are a musician or a filmmaker, the ability to distribute stuff has gone down. But the nice part is if you weren't able to get through the gates before, it's much more able to do it on your own. It's sort of the rise of kind of the independent creator and folks that are able to not have to go through, whether that distribution channel is a retail store for somebody selling their handicrafts, or whether it is, I could go on as a musician and put up, and there are plenty of people that do this. I can put up my own music, I can sell it online. I don't have to go through a record label. So I think that's just the beginning. I think we're going to see literally millions of people who are leaving traditional jobs and are basically able to make their living doing what they love on their own.
Hi. Can you talk for a moment about how this new, as you kind of put it, this new internet order, how it will relate to more or less everyday, not everyday, standard website publishers, the Newsmaxes of the world, the Drudges of the world, etc. If all this information is readily available to each individual campaign, so they can drill down very, very finely, where does, because campaigns used to go to these sites, the Foxes, the MSNBCs, et cetera, to get their message out, where do you see those folks fitting into this hierarchy?
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple things. I mean, one is they now are starting to have greater and greater ability to segment their audience. So you don't have to just buy like a national ad. You can buy them, I mean, this has been happening for a long time, right? On cable, you can go on and target like specific areas. And I think there's always going to be this place for national conversation. But I think, the ability for us to really understand who you're talking to. And so I think, this goes back to the more local campaigns, right? Where, it was not possible for them to buy TV advertising. It was, sometimes possible to do direct mail. But now I think you're going to be able to, for a few $1,000s, if you're running for, local school board as I did in Santa Monica, and I might only need 4,000 votes, I can now go out and really find those 4,000 votes and get to them in a bunch of different ways. I can get their friend, and the most effective way is always to get their friends to talk to them and the people they trust, right? That's always going to be better than advertising. But I think it makes it so that you can now actually have ad copy and have ad targeting that allows you to really precisely get in there. I mean, it's pretty inevitable. Facebook has not allowed this yet, but it's pretty inevitable that you will be able to target on Facebook by voting district. Like, that just seems, I don't know this for a fact, but it just seems inevitable. And they, unlike anyone before them, really, really know where you live. And so, and by the way, people are going across the internet signed into Facebook, right? All of those buttons you see on the New York Times that say post to Facebook and all those Facebook Connect buttons, all of those mean that Facebook is now tracing all across the internet. So it's not just about people spending the large amount of time they spend on Facebook.com. It's also all across these sites. So I think that it'll actually make internet advertising a lot more valuable, right? I mean, this figure I said before about how small the dollars are spent on internet advertising versus the amount of time that people spend relative to TV, that imbalance is going to get rectified. And I think it is that ability to really understand who people are and where they are that's going to start to rectify that imbalance.
Can I add one point to
Please.
What you're saying? I think helps validate where the internet's going. I think it's going a lot further than that. So everybody's got one of these sitting in the room today, a mobile phone. Probably most of you have a smartphone. Probably half of you are sitting in here with an iPad as well, probably more than one device. Being able to go down and do longitude, latitude targeting today, which is available to do with some companies, where you can sit there and target advertising, and you can do contextual targeting. So if an ad's run, let's say there's a story about Obama, we'll use him as an example, and then you could have, and let's say we'll decide who our candidate, Mitt Romney becomes a candidate for the Republicans, he could have an ad, a mobile ad, running right next to that story saying click here to get the truth, then watch a live video for a 30-second video. Then you could opt in to become part of that audience that you could then have a relationship with that person. So it's extending what you're saying, and really where Apple went and where Android's going, it's really extended the internet to where you won't leave your house on any day without this in your hand. You'll leave your purse at home, you'll leave your wallet at home, but you will not leave your phone at home. So I think it validates everything you're saying, and I think this device here is going to be, it'll be somewhat impactful in this election, but I think really to your point about the districts and the people that don't have the millions of dollars to spend to be able to do very targeted advertising, and then integrating in database marketing on top of that. So being able to go find people with double opt-in SMS that you can target people with messages or target via email down to a geo-targeting or down to a zip code level. That's how you really bring this whole digital experience together. Yeah.
I mean, I had to leave my phone in my backpack because it interfered with my mic, and I already feel weirdly naked.
Joe, thank you.
Thanks so much.
I could tell there were lots of other questions, and Joe will be at the reception, welcome reception. You can ask him your question individually. In 2010, I had a unique assignment handed me as a political consultant. You know, I do campaigns in Kentucky and have for the past 22 years, and following the May Democratic primary and Republican primaries in Kentucky, I had a friend who had been running for mayor of Lexington, Kentucky. He was a gay man in a state that had never elected a gay man mayor. After he ran second in a nonpartisan primary, he hired me to pick up his campaign. I looked around my circle of friends, my son Jamie and I did, to try to figure out who it was that we could get to help us turn that campaign around. Going back, if you look at what's happened in Kentucky and mirrored what happened in the country, the favorite Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, Trey Grayson, had been defeated by Rand Paul. Politics was standing on its head in our state. People were confused. They didn't know what to do. So among my two friends, and almost 700 campaigns I've won, I found two people that I knew I could count on, Doc Schweitzer and Lorena Chambers. They are people that I knew I could count on, and I asked them to come help me with this conference. We turned a double-digit loss in the primary into a double-digit win in November. Kentucky has elected their first gay mayor. My son Jamie is now the mayor's chief of staff. That's due in large part to people who understand teamwork. And I do appreciate Doc Schweitzer and Lorena Chambers, not only as friends, but as professional colleagues. I'd like to ask you to welcome them to our stage as our conference co-chairs.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, everyone. I'm Lorena Chambers, and it's just really exciting to see all these great faces here with us today. Doc and I were actually put together as Pollie Conference co-chairs, and we really would love to really share the stage and share our thanks to the folks that really helped us put together this conference program. Undoubtedly, we have a fantastic program for this year. For the next couple of days, it's going to be fantastic, and we simply could not have done it without our really awesome committee. Now, some of us were lassoed in or roped in as board members, but we do have a few folks that actually volunteered straight from Texas and really helped us a lot. So our Texas members on our committee were James Aldretti, Corbin Castile, Jason Stanford, and then we also had Chris Talbot. Our board members that helped us on our committee were Brad Chisholm, obviously Dale Emmons, Ryan Franklin, April and Art Hackney, and Dan Hazelwood. And I really want to thank you really deeply for all of your help on all of our programming.
When Dale roped me into doing this, and it was a rope, I said, let's do some things different. We're in Austin, Texas, so welcome to Austin, arguably one of the best cities in America. I said, let's do things differently. Let's have some different speakers. I thought Dick Cheney, who just spoke, was very good. And I said, we're in Austin, let's take advantage of it, and let's have some receptions and have some real big parties. And we have quite a few coming up starting tonight and through tomorrow. And with that comes fundraising and sponsors. And I want to just thank a number of sponsors. I think we have about 50 different sponsors who are shelling out for this. I mean, they're paying it for everything from a cup of coffee to a glass of tequila. Folks like Public Strategies are going to throw a great party tomorrow night at the Driscoll. Comcast, Tim K, NCC came forward. Google, Roost, Microsoft, Univision, TVB. I mean, I can go on and on. So let's give them a lot of love because we want to give them love through this conference. And I ask all the board members and anybody involved, help them with their problems and everything. Don't help them too much because we want to get them again to keep coming back and back and back. And finally, I just want to say, you know, Austin, Texas, the slogan here is keep Austin weird. And what I suggest is over the next 2 days, let's keep weird. I expect to see several of you dancing naked on 6th Street. With that said, do we go to the reception? Mix Pro and Labels and Lists. We got a reception out there and alcohol. Not keeping you from that. Thank you.